What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Pazza podcast. We are back after a huge win by Inter in the Derby d'Italia, marred by controversy. It had everything you want in a derby. Sorry, we're coming in late this week, guys. I had a weekend where Valentine's Day, which is the day of the game, I was booked up and missed the match. And then on Sunday morning, I go to the grocery store to knock that out of the way. And I have scanned 32 items in the self-checkout aisle of Walmart grocery shopping. This is at like 7:30 in the morning. And boom, all the power goes out. Now you would expect a store, a behemoth like Walmart would have generators. Nope, not this Walmart. I get asked 5 minutes later after standing there in the dark to kindly leave. They don't know when the power is going to be back on. I get home. The power at my townhome is off as well. So my plan was to watch the Inter match at like 8 a.m. yesterday. And maybe we could have recorded yesterday earlier in the day. Power doesn't come back on until about 11:30. Me being the weird sociopath I am, I wanted to get the grocery shopping out of the way so I didn't have to do anything for the rest of the day. So I go do that, come back, finally watch the game. By the time I finished that match, I don't think I was in the right state of mind. My heart and blood pressure was through the roof. And B, it was too late in the afternoon. I think Vince had been sipping on a little much wine by that point. So who knows if he would have been coherent enough to come on. But Vince, glad to have you back on. I think it's right to start this thing with the controversy, of course, the controversial moment that everyone is talking about and the referee error that occurred. Vince, let's talk about this. So give me your thoughts on Conceição on the corner going and diving and not getting a yellow card. Why did the referee not give that yellow card there? It was an egregious error to not give a yellow on Conceição. What were your thoughts?
Well, there was a lot of interesting officiating all day, and I think we can definitely start with that. What about the
Yeah.
one?
Jokes aside, jokes aside, let's talk about the reality of the situation, and it is Bastoni's yellow card on a foul on Conceição, where they say it's a tactical foul, but they are at the edge of their own box in the defensive third. Where is the counterattack starting? How is that a yellow card? How controversial is that in your eyes, Vince?
Uh, in real time, it looked a lot worse than it was.
Oh, of course we're joking, guys. Of course, the episode that happened was Kalulu's red card, his second yellow in the 42nd minute. I'm seeing absolute meltdowns from Juventini. We see the video images of meltdowns from Chiellini at halftime and post-match. Spalletti at halftime, the director of Juve as well at halftime. Vince, just off the initial everything, what were your thoughts on that play where Kalulu makes contact, albeit minimal? Take me through your thoughts on A, the foul, if you thought it was a foul on Kalulu. B, if you thought it was a second yellow offense on Kalulu. And then C, Bastoni's simulation and subsequent reaction to Kalulu getting sent off.
So, I know I joked about this earlier. In real time, yeah, it looked worse than it did when Kalulu did or didn't do whatever he did to Bastoni, and I thought, oh, yep, he's already in yellow. That's it. He's gone. He's done. And then we see some of the other angles, and I do have to say, I think some of what the broadcast showed was a little, I don't want to say it wasn't in good faith, but you could see the angles they were showing were focused more on whatever was going on with any contact with the legs. It looked like they were trying to say, oh, Kalulu clipped him and or didn't clip him at all. There was no leg contact. What happened? Where if you look a little up towards the top of the screen, you could see there was There was a shirt pull or something. It was hard to tell, but Kalulu did extend the arm, which something like that. It makes the call a little bit, it opens the possibility for something like this, unfortunately. And as far as everything that came after, diving's part of the game. You don't like to see it when it happens, but at the same time, how many times have we seen that go against us? It's I think it's okay as a fan of any team to be able to acknowledge objectively, all right, this was a kind of crappy thing to do, and you would hope Bastoni wouldn't do something like that again. But at the same time, we can talk about this objectively, but then you have all these Juventus fans, especially, who are out there claiming that it was the robbery of the century, that, how dare a call go against them, when for years and years and years, we have seen they've been the beneficiaries of some very questionable calls as well, sometimes against us, sometimes against other teams. And you can see there are fans of other teams who are saying that it's rich for Juventus fans to be preaching about this like they are. You know, that said, it's okay to feel done wrong, but for the amount of noise we're hearing about it, it's a little bit ironic. So, taking all of that into account, it's a really unfortunate situation, but it happened. We've been hosed before, and you know, we can't control the refereeing. I've said it before on both sides of it. When a call goes against us, we have to play better. And I would hold Juventus to the same standard, and I think they should hold themselves to the same standard as well. So, unfortunate for them, but we all we can do is play the game that we play.
Yeah. What did you think of Bastoni though? His reaction afterwards.
Uh, I could have done without the him being so giddy and like getting up and saying, "Ooh, it's gonna be a red, it's gonna be a red, send him off," and then celebrating about it. Um, considering, yeah, he kind of dove. It would be nice to see him be a little more classy about that. So, I don't know. He's one of my favorite players on the team, and I'm kind of giving him the side eye for it. But at the same time, how many times have we seen somebody like Chiellini do that for Juventus? So, and
Yeah. True. The thing with this that I don't like was Bastoni's reaction. We see the diving and stuff all the time, but celebrating after you know what you did. I think the first thing I texted you guys after, because I was so late in our group message, I said, build Kivu a statue. And then I said, kind of disgraceful from Bastoni. I didn't like that at all. And I stand by that. Watching it again, I really don't like that from Bastoni. It's a little disgraceful if we're being honest with ourselves as Inter fans. But also, what I want to take from the foul or that play as well is I've seen so many people say, "Oh, it shouldn't have been a yellow." I don't think that's the discussion here. I think the discussion is if it's a foul or is it not a foul? Because if it's a foul, it is a yellow card. It's a bookable offense. Bastoni had a full head of steam going into the middle third. I think he was already in the middle third. So he is winning that lazy pass by Miretti, and he is a full head of steam going forward, propelling the counterattack in the middle third. It's different than that one we were talking about when we joked about Bastoni's foul. That was a yellow because that was at the edge of the Juventus box. There's no counter available. There's no way Juve is on a counterattack. If you watch the play, Bastoni is literally a full head of steam sprinting when intercepting that ball and going forward. So it's not that is it a yellow or is it not? Because if you call the foul, it is a yellow card. He stopped a counterattack. The thing is it a foul? And there was contact up there. The thing is, if Bastoni doesn't dive, there's still enough contact. What if he kind of like stalls back and like does one of these and it slows him down? That's still slowing down a counterattack. it's very gray area in that, and where Bastoni dove, he gave the official no chance to not give a red card there. But it was one of those things. I wasn't a fan of that from Bastoni. I think it was, in my opinion, I think it is disgraceful if I'm being honest with myself as an Inter fan. But also, equally as disgraceful is the response from the Juve directors, Chiellini and the director, and Spalletti at halftime to meet the official in the tunnel, not at midfield where the official has space to move around and stuff, in a tunnel where he cannot escape at all, confront him like that at halftime of a match, not full time, halftime, to try and intimidate him to get more calls in the second half. That is equally as disgraceful, in my opinion, as Bastoni's diving there. Vince, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think we can have that in the game. I know that a lot of Juventus fans have talked about saying, "Oh, good, I'm glad they did that. The ref needed to hear it." But that's no, not how you handle something like that at all.
No, that's not how you treat an official at all, even if you're upset. I mean, you didn't see Marotta meeting whoever was the official in the tunnel after Indica took down Bisek last year in the Inter Roma match. You didn't see Marotta and Zanetti meeting the official after the Milan derby when Pavlovic came through the back of Turam and we got robbed a penalty there. You didn't see Marotta and Zanetti meeting the official in Napoli, in Naples, whenever they got a penalty in the first half at halftime. And so using that intimidation, that is what Juve has done throughout history. They've intimidated these officials and other members of FIGC to get what they want. And it's hilarious to see the meltdown from their fans and everything saying we're scum and we're shambolic and it was a scandal. When how do you not remember everything throughout history that Juve 98, the foul on Ronaldo in the box that wasn't called, Pjanic. This one was the one that I was so pissed off at when it happened. Pjanic clatters on a yellow with Rafinha at midfield. Terrible tackle. Should have been an automatic yellow, which would have been a double for Pjanic. Nothing happened. What did we hear from Juve fans? Crickets. Quadrado, all the diving in the box against us, especially the one with Perisic. The match, the same match, I think Chiellini dives, and then Juve a few years before too in the Champions League. I think it was Buffon's last game in the Champions League with Juve, where they get the penalty late called against them against Real Madrid, and Buffon melts down, gets sent off. Like this victim mentality that Juve has somehow conjured for themselves is absolutely comical. It's we joked in our group message, but it's like having Wanda Nara talk about monogamy. Like, how comical would that be? This is on the same level. A club that literally was selling youth players for like, 40, 50 million euros and buying class players for pennies. Like, they have throughout history shown what kind of club they are. And to attack Inter, and it wasn't just Inter, it was really just one player who made the decision. And Kivu hooked him at halftime. Like, it's not like Inter as a club was like, hey, you have to do this or anything like that. Marotta just came out and said, it was a mistake, A, from Bastoni, B, from the official. If this was Juve that this happened to, their response would have been like, it happens, every team gets undone, blah, 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 blah. They wouldn't admit it that it was a mistake. And I think it's just absolutely comical that this club is trying to play the victim. And it reminds me to share a little personal story. My older sister, she bullied me my whole life, and people probably laughing, "Oh, your older sister." And I don't understand if anybody can grasp my older sister, 4 years older than me, the best goalkeeper I've ever seen live. She was an incredible goalkeeper. Played on a club team that was the third best team in the nation. She was an all-around athlete. She was bigger than me my whole life, and she knew it. Most competitive person. She would cheat at board games when it was just me and her just so she could beat me. Like, that's how competitive she was. And my whole life, she beat up on me, beat me in every game, blah, 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 blah. And my mom always would say, one day there's going to be a day where Travis beats up on you and you're going to have to learn how to take it. And Boomy would always, that's my older sister's name. She'd always be like, no, that's never going to happen. There's no chance he'll ever do this. And one day she was talking shit and I told her she better stop. And she kept going. And I picked her up and slammed her and just started wailing on her. And my dad runs in. My dad was a big 6'3", 300-pound guy. So I was like, I'm not fucking with this guy. So I got off real quick because I knew what was going to happen. But from that moment on, she never wanted to play basketball out in the front yard. She never wanted to go and kick penalties and go 1v1 on penalties because she knew that she was not there anymore against me. And I feel like that's Juve. Like it's such a shitty way to portray yourself. Like you didn't get one call, so you're the victim now. Like I don't know, Vince. What do you think of all that and the Juve mentality, and how comical do you think it is?
It's interesting, and there's as much as you just brought up, there are so many other things we could talk about too. There's Calciopoli, there's the alleged doping, there's how everybody says Marotta League. But at the same time that we're supposedly paying off the referees, we don't have the money for a transfer market. Okay, sure. Um, I don't know. So you hear things like that, and also the fact Marotta was at Juve for how many years? So now suddenly,
Yeah. So if he
so now
learned it,
suddenly he's a snake, but whatever he was doing, if it was shady, it was okay when you were doing it.
hmm
It's
yeah. And where did he learn it then? He came from Juve. That must have been where he learned it, right? If there is a Marotta league,
yeah, just
it's 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 a
just
joke.
some serious mental gymnastics. And yeah, I mean, as angry as we have been about so many calls, and I'm just looking over the last season or two. I know you and I have talked about it. Feels like a lot of calls have gone against us in big games, against Napoli especially. I know we talked about the penalty that was given against us back in October that was so bad, the officiating crew was suspended and then demoted to Serie B upon their return. And like you had mentioned, we didn't see, our players were aggrieved on the field, but we didn't see people going after referees in the tunnel. We weren't, you know, I think that our players and our management handled a situation like that. And when those situations happen, I think we handled that a lot better than Juve handled this particular instance. So yeah, at the end of the day, even though the whole catalyst for this whole incident was it was kind of a dive, I do think the reaction has certainly been blown far out of proportion considering what team we're talking about and considering what we've seen happen when incidents like that go against us. So it's just really unfortunate considering, the rest of the game before and after the incident, I thought it was a great watch. And I know there are a number of friends of mine who cheer for teams that you could call neutral here, teams from other leagues, and they say that, "Oh yeah, that was a great game. That was an entertaining watch as a neutral." So, it's unfortunate that everyone's kind of stuck talking about this particular incident, which yeah, it deserves some discussion, but there's 90 minutes of game that we can talk about. And it's really
Yeah,
unfortunate that
agreed.
that's what a lot of people have come away from this game focusing on.
Agreed. And to put the controversy, the last thing we'll say about it, I think Kivu summed it up well in his press conference after the match. Kivu even said it probably maybe it was a mistake, but Kalulu put himself in that situation. And if you want to go even a step further, Meretti with the ball to Kalulu put Kalulu in a situation where he had to make a decision. And if you're going to be late, uh, you can't. I mean, you're opening self. You're that. I mean, the best thing he could have done was not try and challenge because he was going to be late regardless. So he gave the official a decision to make. The official made the decision, and like I said, the it's not whether or not the yellow was right. It's whether or not it was a foul. Because if you call a foul, it's a bookable offense. So really, Kalulu, he set himself up for failure there. And I guess that's where we should pretty much end this whole thing as far as this controversial moment in the match. And we can get back to talking about the actual play on the pitch because it was, like you said, a fantastic match, had everything you want to see in a derby. This is what over the last 2 years, we've been treated with really good Inter versus Juve matches. And so, yeah, it's nice that we can actually get back and talk about the match now. We'll talk about the goal Inter scored in the 17th minute Vince, did you feel like that kind of came against the run of play? Because it felt like Juve came out in the first 15 minutes or so and really put the pressure on Inter.
Yeah, I would say it was against the run of play. We seemed nervous to open the game, which I had a feeling we probably would be coming in. We've talked time and time again about our struggles in big games for the last 2 years, especially domestically. I mean, let's look at our record against Juve. Last time we played them, we I believe we went down, had to come back, and not only did we blow the win, we blew a draw because we allowed them to come down and score two late goals. What happened before that? Was it that 1-0 game where San Siro scored last spring? Game before
Hmm.
that, I think we were up a couple times, including up 4-2,
Yeah.
and we let Juve score two goals and draw. And the game before that is the last time we beat them, which was a 1-0 game that came from a Federico Gatti own goal. So we have a bit of a problem against Juventus for the last couple of years. That's no secret. And, a few weeks ago I had said there's three big tests for this team in this calendar year. It's the Napoli game, it's the Juve game, it's the Milan game. If you want to make a serious title charge, those are the three games you need to win. Napoli didn't happen. So that put some extra pressure on these two games. And I knew, okay, we're going to see what's going to happen when the guys come out. And sure enough, we came out a little flat. There were a lot of giveaways, a lot of passes that either didn't have enough oomph on them, people were making bad decisions. And it seemed like, I don't want to say we were in trouble, but we started the game pretty poorly. And somehow, Luis Enrique, of all players, gets in shooting position and I don't want to say scores, somehow enables an extremely strange opening goal off a Andrea Cambiaso deflection. And even with that deflection, Di Gregorio, the Juve keeper, should have done something about it. I'm not totally sure what he was trying to do. Um, I don't even know if you could call it a save attempt. It looked like he was trying to like break dance out there. I I texted my friend I have a friend he cheers for Arsenal. We watched the game together, or he watched it at his place. I watched it at mine, but we were texting during it. And I said, okay, I'll take it because it was an extremely strange sequence in a vacuum, but especially considering the run of play around it. Yeah, I don't think anyone was expecting anything. It's like starting the Super Bowl with a safety. You don't think that that's going to happen.
Yeah. It was a strange moment. I don't know. The two games in a row now, the game against Sassuolo and then this match, we've started very slowly in the first 10 to 15 minutes. Maybe that's something we need to be on the lookout for moving forward. Maybe that's hopefully not a trend that's going to be starting. But I do think Juve were on the front foot and we were sitting back a little more, which maybe was something Kivu because in these big matches, we've attacked, and left ourselves exposed. And that's where a lot of these goals have come from that we've given up. So maybe it was something Kivu tactically wanted to see, maybe sit in a little bit, not as high of a line, but getting to the goal from Luis Enrique. My first thought when it went in was, imagine if Jan Sommer had been the goalkeeper and it would have happened to us, this type of goal. The meltdown from Inter fan base would have been absolutely nuts. And Di Gregorio, like, what in the world? I have never, the ball was trickling at such a slow pace. I don't know what was going through his mind to try the right foot when all he had to do was maybe kick that left foot out and he probably would have saved it. And then why was he even on the ground at the first time? Because it's not like, I don't think Luis Enrique was shooting the ball. I think it was a cross and the deflection took the ball to a different path. So, like, the cross, he wasn't going to get to the cross anyway on the ground. It was a weird, strange goal, but in big matches, which we've struggled at, and we've had similar things happen against us, you take stuff like that. You got to have luck in big matches and in Scudetto's seasons. And so I'll take this. But then we couldn't really celebrate long. And this is the theme in every big match, it seems like. And this is the theme throughout this match, really, because 9 minutes later, Luis Enrique scores in the 17th minute, and then in the 26th minute, Juve get a goal back. And it was the trend of defending in big matches that is it's just bonehead. It's there's like two moments in every game where everybody on Inter switches off at the exact same time, and we get punished for it time and time and time and time again. And this was one. Ball comes across Bisek jumping out of the way. I don't understand that at all. Put your left boot through it, knock it into row Z in on the upper tier, get the ball out of there. Even if you miss kick it with your left foot, I think you're away from goal far enough and at an angle where if you miss kick it, it's gonna not be an own goal. So I don't know what he was doing there. And then Luis Enrique to just stand there and allow Cambiaso to get in front. Vince, between those two, and very quickly because we got a lot to go through. Who do you place the blame on more between Bisek and Luis Enrique?
I don't know because they were both two pretty bad errors. One, I don't know why Bissek just gets out of the way. And up to that point, and even after that point, I thought he had a fairly solid game. I thought he was doing a pretty good job on Yildiz. I know prior to that point, he had a pristine tackle on the guy to win a goal kick.
Unbelievable.
That was
Yeah.
a tackle that I thought was well beyond his years, and that shows what his upward potential is. So
Mm-hmm.
to see him go from that to just getting out of the way of the ball when it's something he could have chested down to himself or maybe cleared it or something or tapped it back to Sommer. It was kind of close to goal. Who knows? I thought that was pretty bad. And because of that, maybe Luis Enrique wasn't expecting the ball to make its way over to him. But you knew Cambiaso was there. And you could just see the tentative, the passive way he just tries to do whatever he's doing to the ball. And Cambiaso runs around him basically. And just he wanted it more in that moment. And so between those two,
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's 50-50 because they both should have been doing something a hell of a lot better. Even if Bissek, regardless of whether Bissek had gotten the way or not, Luis Enrique can't lose Andrea Cambiaso like that. That's a right back. It's not like you're dealing with Yildiz in that case either. Come on.
Yeah. I think I would place more of the blame on Bisek, in my opinion, like you said, because I don't think when you run out of the or step out of the way like that so quickly when the ball's being whipped around, it creates a moment where somebody who is like, oh, he's dealing with it, has to react quickly. And so, I mean, Cambiaso is just continuing his run in there. I do think Luis Enrique should have done way better, but Bisek puts Luis Enrique in a very difficult position there. And so I would put more of the blame on Bisek there, in my opinion. But moving forward in this match, 1-1, we have that red card that we've already talked about. And going into halftime, my first thought was you have to take Bastoni off. He's the only person with a yellow card for Inter at this point. We're up a man in a big match. You cannot allow us to go 10-10, have the same number of players on the pitch. You have to do what you can to make sure that doesn't happen. And Kivu agrees. Kivu brings off Bastoni, brings in Carlos Augusto. I thought that was an absolutely perfect substitution at the half. You could have maybe brought in a Cherby, Darmian. I'm glad he didn't. I think Carlos Augusto was the right person to bring on there for Bastoni. A couple minutes later, he brings on Hakan for Baralla. Vince, what did you think of Baralla's performance for this first like 50, 52 minutes that he got to play?
It was all right. I mean, he's coming back from injury, and even before he went out injured, we had talked for a couple weeks about how it seems like in a lot of ways he's been Barella in name only for some time now. So I was all right with the substitution. I was very interested to see the midfield setup of uh, Zielinski, Çalhanoğlu, and Sucic together, because that's really not a group we've seen a whole lot on the field at the same time. Um, and for the most part, I feel like it's a group that worked out. I thought Sucic had a really solid game. Zielinski, we'll get into it, but yeah, obviously great game by him too. And I thought, Çalhanoğlu showed some some good things for his first game back as well. So, um, at the end of
Yeah.
the day, yeah, I thought it was a good sub. I'm really surprised we didn't bring Mkhitaryan into the midfield at all at some point. I really thought we would. I didn't think he would start, but
Yeah.
I did think we were going to bring him in as a sub to try and close out the game, but for him to not even play.
Yeah. We'll get to that in a minute because I obviously have some thoughts on that. But I agree. Barella, I think it was a decent match. Somebody who hasn't played in 2 weeks to come back and do the biggest match in Italian football. Yeah, I think he did all right. Maybe could he have done better? A player on Barella's level and quality is all should always be searching for that flawless match. But I don't think he really did much wrong. Kivu again makes a couple of subs, and what's important, I mentioned it a couple weeks ago when we played Fiorentina, that Palladino did, where he brought on a player at half, and that gives you're still three sub windows when you use because that doesn't take up a sub window at half. So you still have your three sub windows. So the first one that we used in the second half was Hakan for Barella that Kivu used, and then the second one, Andy Doof and Pio on for Luis Enrique and Pierre Sucic. And this was one that I think really changed the match for Inter. Kivu, I said last week on Uncle Sharma's show, it seems like he can't do any wrong right now. And I'm kind of done questioning Kivu at this point because whenever he brings the substitution on, we go to that 3-4-3, you see Thuram go out wide. You see Diouf playing out wide on the right side. And I think that really gave Juve something different that we haven't seen from Inter in such a long time. Because before that, we're doing that just cross, 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 cross. And when you put Diouf and Thuram on the outside, two players who want to take on players, we saw it a couple of times with Diouf. We saw Thuram on that shot that he whipped. That was a great shot. He started on the outside, takes his man on one, dribbles directly at him, cuts in, takes the shot. It creates gaps elsewhere in the pitch whenever you have two players doing something like that. So I think it was a really smart sub by Kivu. And with him doing that at halftime, he left himself also one more wild card sub that he could have done, which he eventually did. But I think it was really, really good planning from Kivu in this match and everything he did. Like I said, I don't really think Kivu did anything wrong in this match. But these two subs, Diouf and Pio, impacted the match really well. And our Wonder Boy, the youth product, the future of Italy, the strongest man on earth, Pio, grabs his goal in the 76th minute. Vince, what did you feel whenever that went in? That felt like it was going to be the winner. What were your thoughts?
Oh, that was special. And how great would it have been for, I mean, it was a great DeMarco cross into Pio. And, we've talked about the form DeMarco's in right now. We've talked about the form that Pio Esposito is in right now and how he's kind of rounded into his own. For those two to link up for a game winner against Juventus, that would have been massive. That would have been a
It,
one hell of a
it would have
one
been
hell of a
special.
story, one hell of a special moment.
Yeah.
And,
Hmm.
15 minutes to go, hoping, all right, please, let's let that be all she wrote. And of course, it could not be. But for a
Yeah.
brief,
We're Pazza Inter.
always, sempre. Um, we knew for a minute that, okay, we're gonna have to try and close up shop here. Can we do it? 15 minutes is a lot of time. And yeah, for that brief shining moment where it seemed like we had a really good feel good story to end the match, it was gone. And you
Yeah.
could say there's a few things you could say about the equalizer that Juventus found. Right off the bat, we need to do better closing out games. We've talked about that for years, in like 2 years now in these big games. It keeps happening. And we've done it against Juventus a couple times now. And for them to do it to us again while they're a man down, I was pissed. It was like, are we really doing this again? I knew this would happen every damn time. So it was
Yeah.
frustrating from that larger scope, but looking at it within the game, there was a couple things you could say about this too. I don't know what Lautaro was doing when he lost the ball leading up to that. Just boot it, clear it. Why are you getting cute with it? Why are you trying to dribble your man? Just get rid of the ball, play keep away. He's got to be better than that. But you can also say, and we go back to the officiating, which was the theme from Saturday, you could it seemed like he was I would have called that a foul when Juventus took the ball off of him and came down. I thought that should have been a foul in the build-up. Nothing came of it, and we can talk about the officiating all we want considering everything that happened on both sides. There was obviously the Kalulu red card, there was Bastoni getting booked in the first place, there was a missed uh, foul on Sucic right outside the boxes. A whole host of things we could have talked about.
That led to Bastone's yellow card, that missed foul on
Right. So
Sucic.
there's all I don't want to dwell on the officiating too much for that particular part of the play, but there's so many reasons why in that moment I was just angry and kind of resigned to it at the same time. I'm like, of course, how did I know this was going to happen? This is what happens every time.
Yeah. Any fan of Inter, and more specifically, anybody who's been watching Inter for the last 18 months knew this was going to happen. Even being up 11 or one man, 11v10, we knew this was going to happen. But the way that it happened, it just pisses you off so much. Again, it's a collective, everyone shuts off for a split second, and it's a domino effect that leads to a goal. Like you said, Lautaro doing idiotic thing up there and losing the ball, which came after Turam doing almost the exact same thing, losing the ball back to back. And then I was so pissed off at Zielinski, who's my boy. Everyone knows, but the defending to allow Locatelli a yard or two in the 18-yard box is absolutely unforgivable. Unforgivable. I was so upset at Zielinski. I but again, it's like I knew it was like the inevitable. This is what's going to happen. And you could even just feel us being up a man. I never once felt like we were going to win the match. It never felt easy. It felt laborious, and it felt disjointed a lot of times from this
And
Inter
even a man
side.
down, they were giving us
And
some problems with some counterattacks all game.
exactly. And it's just frustrating to see. But when it comes to a derby, everything goes out the window. If we would have been down a man, maybe we would have gone more on the front foot. I saw a couple of guys, Johnny and Alessandro from the Interviews podcast, talking about how we looked better towards the end of the first half, before Kalulu even got the red card, after that Cambiasso goal. We looked way better when it was 11v11 than we did at any point in the second half, really, when we were up a man. So it just goes with the psyche in these big games with these players that they have struggled in the last 18 months. Everything goes wrong, and it's infuriating. But to get over that hump, you need a little bit of luck. You got to have a little bit of luck. And Inter ultimately got that today. Before we talk about the winner, I was talking earlier about Kivu keeping that sub in his back pocket, that last substitution window. And before Locatelli's goal in the 83rd minute, I was after Pio scored. I was like, oh, brilliant. He kept that sub. He didn't want to do it too early. Now we can bring on an Acerbi, De Vrij, whoever else, and shut this game out. And what a brilliant decision for Kivu not to do that, because after that, he gets to bring on Boni for Turam. Now, I don't think Boni had a great game or a great showing by any stretch of the means, but he brings on fresh legs in the attack. Turam looked gas, and so he kept that in his back pocket after that. It was absolutely brilliant by Kivu. And then we get the winner. And Vince, I don't know if you felt the same as I whenever it went in or before it went in, but in the buildup of it. I thought Zielinski completely had a terrible touch, and I was so pissed off. I was like, "Oh, heavy touch! Are you kidding me? You're at the top of the box." And then I don't know how he got to it before Locatelli, and then he just ripped an absolute piss missile at the freaking goal. And I got down on both knees, looked up, and was doing, the like Andy Dufresne and Shawshank Redemption. I'm doing that in the rain.
Looks
And
like you're
like,
hitting
I'm
Pio's
not gonna
move over
say I
here.
cried. Yeah, I'm not gonna say I cried, but man, there were some emotions that went through me when that happened. And for it to be my boy Zielinski, the guy who what he went through last season and he's been vocal about under Inzaghi, and then just to see the evolution of him. I was such a big fan. I saw him some at Udinese. I'm not going to say I was like a stan at that point, but when he was at Napoli, I fell in love with Zielinski. And when we signed him, I was so happy. And now we get to see that quality. And it meant so much, I think, for every Inter supporter when that went in. Vince, what was your emotional reaction whenever that happened?
Oh, it was my neighbors probably heard me. I don't remember what I said exactly, but I know they had to hear me yelling. Um, you'd mentioned what you thought was a heavy touch. I actually, that moment had given me a really good feeling because in that moment, the thing it reminded me a little bit of, I don't know if you remember this. It was a game down the stretch last season. Nikola Zalewski he had a touch to score a goal. It was a golazzo.
Oh,
The
was it the
Torino
Torino
match.
match
Yeah.
where?
It reminded
Oh
me a
yeah,
little bit of
Golasso.
that one. And when I saw that, I'm like, okay, maybe he can rip something here. Because I had said in the group chat a few times, what we need here is a Chala screamer. This is the type of game where Çalhanoğlu breaks it open with a long range strike. And I thought that if we win, good chance it's going to be Çalhanoğlu doing something like that. I just got the player wrong. Um, so to see,
Yeah, the man on
yeah,
form.
so for Zelensky to come through like that with a absolutely beautiful goal in the moment of truth, right as stoppage was starting. That, oh my God, the emotional whiplash, just the last 15 minutes. It goes from
Yeah.
shouting, screaming, let's go, it's PO, to you got to be kidding me. Again, this again, to oh, we're so
Mm-hmm.
back. It's Zelensky. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that game really had everything from start to finish. You look at the game script, just everything that happened, like the officiating, the goals being scored, the back and forth at the end. It had everything, and you got to give it to credit. You got to give some credit to Juve for putting in a fight like they did on the road, down to
Definitely.
10 men, and
Mm-hmm.
still taking us to the wire like that. You can talk about us being choke artists. Yeah, there's some truth to that, but they did what they had to, and they almost came away with something. So it was a hard fought game, and that's why I say again, it's unfortunate that we dwell on the refereeing episode because even without considering that, this game truly did have everything.
It did. It was absolutely great match, and I think you're right. And we have to give credit to Juve. They Spalletti set them up, and they played a really good match. Locatelli, you could maybe argue, was the best player on the pitch. Bremer was having his way with our strikers. Lloyd Kelly, he looked pretty good. There's not much. Jonathan David maybe was the only one for Juve that you could say like, what did he do? But other than that, yeah, they played really great. And for anyone who doesn't know or is just becoming an Inter fan and doesn't know Pazzi Inter, like this is the DNA. We've mentioned it so many times on here between me and you, Vince. I was became a fan mid 2000s. I knew I liked Inter in like the late 90s when I figured out that R9 played for Inter, but I couldn't watch Italian football. So that was just the reality of living in America at the time. But whenever I was able to actually watch Italian football and watch these Inter matches, 2004, 2005, that has been Inter. And you could probably look historically pre that. That has been our DNA. There's been games against Roma towards the end of the 2000s where there was one vividly I remember that Crespo scored in the dying moments, and we came back from 3-1 down, and we had no chance of winning it. There's the Inter Siena 4-3 match. There's so many things that you can point at throughout the last 20, 25 years that justify that. So we should have known after Locatelli's goal in the 83rd minute. It's kind of like if you are American and watch American football, like Tom Brady, you don't give Tom Brady 20 or 15 seconds left in a game because you know he's going to come down and score Like you absolutely don't do that with Inter. If you score in the 83rd minute, Juve's biggest problem was they didn't score in the 94th minute. Like they gave us as crazy Inter time to give ourselves a moment. And I'm so glad that it was Zielinski rocking the jersey right now. Inter comes away all 3 points. First big win in Serie A, you could say, in 2 seasons now, or season and a half. And it's Kivu. Kivu gets it. He's the man. Vince, I've been talking about Kivu this whole time and how I think he was flawless and absolutely great. What were your thoughts on Kivu's performance as the coach in this
I thought he
match?
handled it really well. Um, as I said before, looking at New Year's, back at New Year's, looking ahead to the rest of the season, I said there are the three must-win games. You got to come home with one of those, ideally multiple. And he came home with, first chance he missed, but he came home with beating Juventus. And that is a really nice feather to have in his cap. I thought, he passed the tests. He performed well with the lineup he deployed, with the subs he made, the whole approach to the game. And, you know, I I know Kivu was probably no one's first choice when we went on our coaching search last summer, but I know that in at least in our group chat, the when his name started coming up into the discussion, the more we talked about him, the more we all started to think, okay, maybe he is the guy. Maybe this does make sense. And I know early on there were some bugs, losing your first three games to Juve, Napoli, and Milan, and then that random Udinese game. Yeah, that was a little rough. But looking at the other things that Kivu has done to this team, we don't drop those gimme points against smaller teams like Inzaghi's teams would get careless with and do sometimes. Um, Kivu, you can tell he's a leader. He trusts the youth. He doesn't play favorites. Inzaghi would play the same 11 guys every week if he could, or every game if he could. Kivu's a lot more willing to try different things, and it's Inzaghi's rigidity that meant when things went off script or things went wrong, you could see that we never really had a plan B. But even from Kivu at the start, you could see in some of those early Club World Cup games where things got a little scrappy, he wasn't afraid to mess with the formation, to throw guys like Valentin Carboni or Pio Esposito out there to try something different to see if they could change the script. So I think Saturday it was an A-plus performance from Kivu for me because it was kind of the culmination of a lot of what we've seen from him, and I think we're starting to see him grow
Mm-hmm.
into a really solid coach here. And I hope we can extend him because I like what I see and I hope he can be the guy for years to come.
Yeah, and I think Kivu, his thing that he has done in these last few months, if you look at it too, we've been without Hakan for extended periods of time, Dumfries for an extended period of time. Now we've been without Barella for a couple weeks, and we're still getting results. It's all that matters, and that's a little bit of maybe Mourinho coming out in Kivu. Get the result, worry about the performance later. And that's, you see the team responding after matches and stuff like that too, in the same way. And that's where I think he's having the big impact, is just mentally on these guys. When we have a controversial decision go against us, boom, don't address it. Let's move on to next week. And I think that's very important. I think you also have to maybe give credit to Kolarov and Palumbo. I've mentioned it a time or two on here, but I think it's almost, you see Kolarov a lot talking to the players throughout the match. He's not on the sideline like Kivu screaming, going crazy, but when players come over to the touchline, Kolarov is the one kind of talking to the players there. So I think it's almost like a triumvirate between him. Kivu is obviously the man in charge, but you got Kolarov and Palumbo kind of assisting very heavily there. So you got to give Kivu the credit. Like I said, I think he had an absolutely great match. Could it have gone better from a gameplay? And if Inter wins 3-0, obviously that's better. But his responses when stuff went wrong and stuff, that level head that has made all the difference within the team. And talking about Kivu and his leadership, we have to talk about our other leader, because I see a lot of people, again, hating on Lautaro. He did have that mistake, but Lautaro worked his freaking socks off that match. Was he imperfect? Yes. at fault probably for that second goal, losing the ball partially at fault. Yes. But the work he did off the ball and throughout the match, he didn't get a goal, but he cares so much for Inter that he is willing to go out there and just work his socks off and die for this team. And I love that about Lautaro. Vince, do you have anything to say about Lautaro to add to what I just said?
He was a passenger for the most part yesterday. I know he did, or Saturday. I know he did have one shot. I can't remember when exactly, but when
Sommer, or that was on the Sommer or not Sommer, Sucic, I think played it through to him and he kind of snapped at it.
yeah, there was one sequence early. There was a couple sequences where we had a few shots at it. I know Zelensky. There was a moment where he almost scored, but there was a clearance late.
Yeah.
Lautaro had he ripped one. I thought it was going in, but he just missed it. Um, like we have always said, his work rate is there. There's no questions about his hustle. You know, for a big game, you expect a better performance out of him. When was the last time he scored against Juventus? Because if I remember correctly, it was the fall 2023 game at
I think it was like Coppa Italia too, wasn't it?
it might have been.
I don't even think
I
it was a
know I
league
know there was a
match.
league match where the year of the second Stella, the Seconda Stella, it was the second game where we had beat them 1-0 of the Gatti own goal, and I think it was the first game where Juventus had opened the scoring, and we were worried that they were gonna just sit back and Allegri ball it to the end, and Lautaro scored a goal there to equalize, and from there it ended in a draw. I think it was that fall.
I remember that one. That was the one. I think Turam had the assist. It was like immediately right
Yes.
after Juve scored. It was like in January where we were neck and neck in the table kind of deal, and we hit on a counter, and Turam slid it in for
Yeah,
Lautaro.
so we know it's been a while. It's been more than 2 years since he scored against Juventus, and like we've said, it's a team we've had problems with. Did I really expect Lautaro to score yesterday, Saturday? I was hopeful. I wouldn't say it was a bad performance. The only really bad thing that stuck out was, losing the ball like he did at the end there. For the most part, I would have just called his performance inconsequential, but he didn't really have to carry because there were a lot of other guys yesterday who showed up big time. Federico
Hmm.
DeMarco, Pio Esposito, Piotr Zielinski, of course, Jan Bisek, barring that one early mistake. I thought Jan Sommer played a great game too. I know I have been very critical of Sommer in the group chat and on this show and online as well on Reddit, but I got to give the guy his flowers. Especially after as bad as a performance he had the last time we played Juventus, I thought he did really well on Saturday. He had a really good diving save on Yildiz. He was decisive. He was proactive. He wasn't afraid to come out and punch the ball away to sweep things up as needed. That's the on summer that I've wanted to see the whole time and that we've seen for the last 2 years and that we've been missing for most of this year. And Summer is somebody that I have talked about wanting to see Pep Martinez more in net, but Summer is still the guy I would have liked to see yesterday or on Saturday, but that's because we don't play Joseph enough. He hasn't had enough play time to get ready for a game on the level of Juventus. So because of that, for better or worse, I knew we were going to have to bank on Jan Sommer. And I thought he came through. So at the end of the day, um, as many times as Lautaro has carried us in other games or been the difference maker, it's nice that sometimes he doesn't always have to be the one carrying the team because it's a big load to carry. And it's nice that we can get guys like DeMarco, Zielinski, and Pio now to help him share the load a little bit.
Exactly. And going to your point with Jan Sommer, I don't think he did, and don't get me wrong, I think he had a good game. I don't think he did anything like spectacular. He made the saves that people have been calling for him to make all season. And that's all you can really ask for. Like make those saves, keep us in the match, and that's what he did. So hats off to Jan Sommer. He has to have been hearing all the stuff in the media, but again, to Kivu's credit, he has been outspoken in the media and given support to Jan Sommer. So the retribution that we have after this match from everybody getting back on Jan Sommer's side, again, Kivu handled the situation perfectly. And that's what I'm saying. Like I'm done questioning anything Christian Kivu does because it seems like he can do no wrong. Now I need to knock on wood because who knows what's going to happen the rest of the season, but at this current moment, he is making every decision right. And a decision that he got right yesterday, or sorry, Saturday, another one is not bringing on Mkhitaryan at all in this match. I put out a short the day before on Friday regarding the rumors that have come out about Mkhitaryan potentially getting extended another year on his contract. It makes me sick to hear that that's even a consideration. This guy is a bum. He hasn't had it for well over 18 months to 2 years now. I don't care what capacity within the squad they're talking about him being extended. The reality is he's just not of Inter quality anymore. And so I thought it was a big statement, especially after these rumors coming out that Christian Kivu left Mkhitaryan on the bench, opting for Boni, Diouf, Pio, Hakan, who's coming back from injury. All these players in place of this 37, going to be 38-year-old next year. So hats off to Kivu for that. Moving forward now, we have an 8-point lead on Milan, who have a game in hand. They play Como midweek, and that is going to be the game that gets them back level as far as games played with us, Milan versus Como. To finish out our league schedule in February, we have Lecce and Genoa. Milan have that Como match in Parma. Vince, with these two games, us with Lecce and Genoa, Milan with Como and Parma, what level of confidence are you moving forward into March that Inter will maintain this 8-point lead? And then where does that take your level of confidence moving forward as far as the rest of the season?
I don't want to say too much too soon. I would say I do have some cautious optimism. I know this was the big game in February, the Juventus test, and we passed. And so, Lecce is the next game. I know you and I talked before we started recording. We're going to be missing a couple guys with yellows, Chalanolu and Barella, I believe, if what we saw is correct. So we are fortunate in that the past few games we've had to play without them anyway. So for now, we're kind of used to that, and we should hopefully be able to deal with that. And I know Kivu, like we said, has been pretty good about bringing home points against teams that we should beat on paper. I know Lecce was one we needed a late winner from Pio last time, but
It was a tough one.
and
Yeah.
I know that was at the San Siro too. We're going to Puglia this time. We're going to Lecce this time.
Hmm.
So, there is some slight trepidation about that, yes, but I do trust that Kivu will have the guys ready for it. Um, who did you say we have after Lecce in the league? Was it Genoa? They're
Genoa, yeah.
tough. Is that home or away? Do you know?
Let me look. I feel like we played at Genoa the first match. That was when Vitinha scored the late one to make it 2-1, and we were all shitting bricks at the end of
Yeah,
it.
that's right.
Yeah, it is at the San
Okay,
Siro.
so all right, I feel cautiously optimistic about that too. This midweek Bodo game I think is going to be interesting. I do think, considering everything that happened with this Juve game and how much it probably took out of us, I think there's a pretty good chance that we go up to Norway and we come out a little bit flat. And I know, thankfully, it's a two-legged fixture, so we can, worst case, maybe hopefully we can scrap a draw or something. Maybe somebody like Pio or Bonnie can find a goal somewhere and we can win. Uh, and then we can just worry about the second leg because that one's at home. Hopefully that's a little bit more. Hopefully that one is something that we can do a little bit better. Um, yeah, the fixture congestion right now has me worried because again, this is the point where we look at last year. We were in the conversation for a continental treble in as late as April, and in a month it just evaporated out from under us. Um,
Yeah.
as far as our path going forward, I think we should be able to beat Bodo. I think it would be a big disappointment if we do not advance past them, point blank. I know they're having a pretty good campaign, but considering the scale of teams, we should at least be able to get to the round of 16. Domestically, we should be able to handle those games. Hopefully, Milan will drop some points like we've seen them do in some cases against some of these opponents. And I do think we ended up with a pretty favorable Coppa Italia draw. I do think that, we played Como once this year. We beat them 4-0. That's pretty convincing. On the other side of the bracket, then I believe it's Lazio and Atalanta, if I remember correctly. So there's no Milan, there's no Juventus, there's no Napoli. One of my nightmare scenarios was drawing Napoli and having to play them in a two-legged fixture, one of which right in front of the next Milan derby. And thankfully we avoided that. We'll still have to play Como, but that's a long way of saying that looking ahead, I feel good about our chances for now, but I do worry that we could be looking at another late collapse as the fixtures add up. I don't think we have I don't think we can pull off a late Champions League run, a Scudetto charge, and a Copa title run. I think there is a very good chance we could pull off a domestic double if some cards line up. But that's a lot of words to say that I need to see some of the next couple weeks first. I'll February, I'm liking what I've seen so far. Let's get into March and then I'll start being able to assess things a little better, I think.
Yeah. I think the midweek match for Milan is a big one. I think Rabiot got a red card the last match, so he's going to be out versus Como, which is huge for Milan. So if we go +8 with level on games played, I will feel a lot more confident in our squad. And you're talking about the Bodo match midweek. We talked about Barella, or you said Hakan and Barella maybe missing. We can't confirm that. We're trying to figure that out. But I do think it is Hakan and Barella missing against Lecce. Well, they're not going to miss that Bodo match midweek. They don't have the yellow card suspension there. So maybe we can plug them in from the start, get a little bit of rest for Zielinski. I wouldn't mind seeing our midfield from last year, Hakan, Barella, Mkhitaryan getting, the first half to 2/3 of that match. And that way against Lecce, we can have Sucic, Zielinski, these players healthier and rested, ready to go against in the league. And I don't know. I feel last season, I don't know how we made the push and to the Champions League final. Ultimately, we collapsed in that and the Serie A. But right now, I just feel like we're in a really good spot where Çalhanoğlu's coming back healthy, and we've made it through a very tough January and February, half of February, with him not even being part of the squad. Dumfries, we don't even know where he's been for the last 3 months. So without him, and then Barella, the last couple of weeks getting through these matches, these guys are getting healthy here along with Darmian. We've had Luis Enrique Diouf getting important minutes because of this. And it just feels like we have what it takes to make a deep run in every competition and win the Scudetto. So I'm trying to keep my confidence in check, but it feels like there could be potentially, I don't want to say trouble or anything like that. Don't get it twisted, but it feels like this could be a pretty special season where we could come away with multiple trophies, in my opinion. And that's just because of when you look at the grand text of what this season has been, from starting out rocky with a new coach, Kivu growing, and then getting these injured players back, going from tying Napoli in a big match to then finally, albeit a crazy match where we got a lot of luck, but finally getting over that hump in a big match against Juve. Everything, the stars just seem to be aligning, and it seems to be like everything is kind of going our way. So I have a lot of confidence in this team. We are Inter. We're the biggest club in Italy. We should be winning every year the Scudetto and Coppa Italia. And I think Kivu has really put that mentality in these guys' heads, whether it is Lautaro, the captain, or Di Gregorio, the third string keeper. I think everyone is on the same page as to what this season means and what we have to do and what wearing this badge means. So I'm extremely confident in closing out this season as far as an Inter fan. So let's let this confidence radiate throughout the episode and everybody until we inevitably make me eat my words and travel to Norway and lose 5-0 or something like that. But we're going to wrap it up here, guys. That's all we have. Again, please make sure you like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. I also, my wonderful wife was nice enough to re up on some Patsa Podcast stickers. And if you want some, I've sent some to Australia. I've sent some to Europe. I've sent some to South America. So if you want a sticker, guys, just reach out to me, DM me on Instagram, Patsa_podcast, and I'll send you a Patsa podcast sticker free of charge. It's really no big deal. I just want to let everybody know that. Vince, do you have any words before we sign off?
No, that's it. It was really great to see us pass that test, beat Juventus. There's one more big derby that I would love to see us take this year, and if we can pull that off, then yeah, I think maybe we'll see. I know you clown me for being cynical. I'd love to join your optimism, so give it a couple weeks, maybe I'll come around.
Yes, getting on the optimism train. I
No
like it.
promises.
Well, guys, like I said, please please like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. And as always, Forza
Sempre.
Inter.